for the this is the monthly meeting for the PAC board from Marin Valley Mobile Country Club. And we meet monthly, and I'd like to introduce the other members of the board. Myself, John Shelfer, been living here about 12 years. The vice president is John Hanson.
Right here. And
Our secretary-
I've been here for a while too.
Our secretary is Carol Joy Harris, and she may be the oldest, not the oldest, but the longest living in Marin Mobile Country Club of the park. Correct?
Yes.
Steve Ploker is our treasurer, and Vicky Waddell is our standing. How do we? What is it?
At large.
At large. Happy to have you, by the way. So without further ado, I'd like to call for the approval of the final agenda.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. So the general agenda stands as read. And now for public comment for items that are not on the agenda, with a 3-minute limit for all comments for this and everything in the meeting. We have a hand raised here from Bill Davis.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to talk about the status of the current rules and regulations that we have. And looking them over, I'm not quite sure if they don't date back to the Miwoks or when we were under the flag of the Mexican Republic, because they're quite antiquated. I understand there's a current updated version, and it's on the desk of the city one of the managers anyhow, Chris Blanc, who knows a lot about the infrastructure and organization of this park. Is there any way we could reach out to him, or you could, this group, and request that he get those underway so we can be under the appropriate rules and regulations of a timely fashion? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other public comment? Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Rodriguez, 9 Fallen Leaf. 2 things. One is I wanted to comment that in the minutes it said that I was going to volunteer to provide language to the board on the Bagley-Keene Act, and I did do that. So I just wanted to wrap that part up. The second thing was that we all received a notice about the mobile home residential law changes for 2023. And I did look at the 5 laws that modified them, and I probably only have time for a few. I just wanted to let you know that SB 869 Levy, what they're going to be requiring is by 2025 that one person in the mobile home park will be required to attend training and receive a certification that they must post, that a potential third party will be providing on things like rules and regulation. After that, every second year, they'll be required to do 2 to 4 hours of training. So that's one thing. We may have an opportunity to contribute to the curriculum if we think that is important. The second was AB 2031, and that was that anytime a park manager is asked in writing by someone within the park to meet with them to discuss certain things, the law was expanded to require that any time that includes utility billing and charges in the common areas, that the manager has 30 days to meet with that person as well as their designated representative and or to provide language interpreters. So I wanted you to know that. And then the third and final one, and I'll come back next month with the other 2 because they're a little more complicated, is that right now when somebody wants to rent a space, the manager has the authority to get a consumer report on the applicant to see about their eviction history or their financial stability. What this law says is they may no longer charge a fee to do this to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to the other two next month. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to go forward and ask for approval of the minutes of the January 3rd, 2023 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Any comments about the minutes from the board? Any comments from the residents?
I would just
John
like to
hasn't.
say that the minutes were excellent.
Excellent minutes.
I'll third that. Okay, I call for approval of those minutes.
Oh, you have to ask if there are
Residents?
comments or questions or corrections from the residents as well.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the residents?
Ellen
My-
Jane has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I sent the message via Carol Joy. I asked her to thank you, Terry, for those minutes are just outstanding. So thanks again for really covering the bases. Thanks.
Any other comment? I don't really see, unless they're showing up in the chat, I don't see them on the screen, whether when someone raises their hand or wants to have something to say. So I authorize anyone else in the board that if you see a question to let me know.
We'll
Okay,
cover
can I
that.
call for a vote? All those in favor of accepting those minutes? 5-0, thank you. Is Matt on board this afternoon, this evening?
Looks like it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Matt, can we receive your report on maintenance and capital projects?
Sure. Good evening, board.
Good evening.
We had quite a bit of storm cleanup and debris cleanup after those heavy rainstorms. We had to send a group of guys out again in the total park perimeter to clean all the V ditches out, which was good in a sense because we found a lot of areas that were weak and that we need to do some repairs on that aren't draining properly. We had them go back and clean all the big catch basins that are surrounding the park and in the park. We this year hired a street sweeper to go through the park, gelati sweeps, and do a complete interior park cleanup. We had quite a bit of water intrusion that came out of the basement in the lower two rooms, the card room and the billiard room. And there was so much water that came up out of the ground that it went up over the concrete stem wall and leaked into both of those rooms. We didn't recognize that it must have happened at some point in the past years ago because I did find an old non-working sump pump in the basement that we are going to replace and clean up so that it can drain properly. But it was quite a bit of water, so we hired a company to steam clean, treat the carpets with enzymes, and we've had dehumidifiers going 24 hours a day, and they're still filling with water, and we're emptying them. But we wanted to get on it before there's any mold or mildew, and it did start smelling a little bit dank of mildew. We're going to have the steam cleaner come back again and shampoo again. Hopefully we've got it. I had the north boundary, the perimeter boundary of the park below the clubhouse. There was an old broken barbed wire fence there that I had removed and replaced this year. All new posts and new wire. We just finished several weeks ago a large concrete retaining wall on Marin Valley Drive, which is our biggest wall of the year. I've got guys that just installed a new concrete walkway in between the two doors of the gym, because we've recognized that people walk through the dirt and mud and track it into the gym. And I think this will alleviate the constant cleanup of the carpets in there. And during this, we've found that all the catch basins in the front garden were not functioning properly, were completely packed. The drains themselves and the pipes were broken. They're so old. So we've replaced quite a bit of those, and we're hoping it's going to work better. The guys are currently removing, and they're probably in the replacement stage now, of all the decomposed granite that's in the front that was creating or had eroded, and there was a lot of trip hazards around the flagstone in front of the bench where people sit and congregate. So that's going to be put back with hardener and done properly. There was no compacted gravel under the old granite. It was just put over dirt. The same thing is going to happen, but not quite as deep on the PG&E path. Every time it rains very hard, there's some deep ruts that I'm always concerned that somebody's going to twist an ankle. So that's going to happen next. And other than replacing the flagstone and the new DG, that would culminate my report for tonight, unless you have any questions about maintenance or capital.
So Matt, can you comment a little bit on the energy usage for residents and the rates being charged by PG&E?
Well, excuse me, before we move on to that, the water usage, energy usage, street and parking lot, the other parts of Matt's report. Matt, I have a question on the report that you have given so far, and
Okay.
that is about the street sweeper.
Mhm.
Is this something that is going to recur on a particular basis, or is this just as needed?
Right now, it's as needed. There isn't really a line item to have him come back on a regular basis, but I've noticed in the past that, honestly, every now and then a large street sweeper comes through the park and nobody knows which company it is. Even the city I've called, they don't know who it is. They think that it may be somebody from Public Works, but they're not sure. I asked them to come out after these storms, because there was a lot of gravel on Scenic and a lot of mud. They said they were too busy, and they're the ones that gave me the name of this gentleman that came out. Unfortunately, the day that he started, his machine broke, so he had to wait an extra 8 or 9 days to get it fixed to come back. But he's a nice guy. He did a good job. He was recommended by Public Works, and I think unless we get him on his own line item and we create something within the budget for him, or you feel the need for him to come back regularly, I think it's going to be when the park is looking like it needs it, we can call him and he'll come out.
So we could put a line item in and have it be not on a particular basis, but still have it be as needed, but have that as a line item, correct?
We could.
Okay.
Yes, or we could increase the general repairs line item slightly and use that, but whichever one that you guys would prefer, if you want to see what it costs on a regular basis in the monthly financials, or I can let you know.
Matt, in the past, the city has actually provided that, and they recommended you to use this individual. In the past, were we charged separately, or did that come in under general administrative expense
I've never received a bill
from the
And,
city?
yes, and they don't recognize the type of machine that's coming in. I actually do think it's Public Works, but they at least Chris Blunk doesn't know who it is or have a contract. I think it's just somebody that may have done the work once in a while, or is coming up Marin Valley Drive below the park and just continues in, but nobody seems to know who it is. And it's very random and once in a while.
Seems like their bookkeeper could tell.
I don't know.
So there
Ellen
any,
Jane has her hand up. Ellen Jane has her hand up.
oh, okay, Ellen Jane.
Thank you. This is kind of peripheral to something you said, Matt, because you mentioned fences and barbed wire fences. And I wondered if there was any thoughts about the youngsters who come up and are investigating our property, and whether there's, I think sometimes they come over, they just climb over the fence at Meadow Drive, but they have been coming up also from down below there through the wild space. Is there something, are we supposed to say go away, or in a nice way?
Whenever we get, yeah,
I mean, they look-
sometimes kids come up from the apartments and we ask them
Yeah.
to, go back home. We don't want them around the pool. We don't want any kids by the pool. There's no lifeguard. I really don't know how we can keep them out of the park. They can climb over anything. Sometimes they do come through the emergency exit there in Meadowview, and you're right, a lot of times they just walk through the brush and come up above the pool and come in that way and hang out in the breezeway. It seems to happen
Yeah.
more in the summer than when it's warmer out.
Yeah, it was lately. Well, it was a recent incident. Peggy Hill was there, and there were 3 fellas, and they were coming into the breezeway, and somebody said, well, maybe Peggy, and they said, oh yeah, my aunt. Well, what's her name? Somebody talking? Hello?
No, but I
Oh,
would say
well,
we're getting
anyway,
away from Matt's report.
Yeah, well, these kids were like, they made up a name, like they said, oh, my aunt, blah, 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 and they mumbled it. So they're kind of up to no good, but that's what little boys do, I guess. So yeah, somebody should turn their speaker off. Okay, thank you. Little boys.
Matt, what's the possibility of electrifying the fences?
We could do that, but I don't think that it would help the bottom line if somebody got.
No, that's not a good idea.
Also, it is public property, even though the signs say private property, it isn't. It's owned by the city, so it's public property.
Especially the open space, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so anyway, sorry,
Okay.
Matt.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I've talked to those guys before. So I'm going to tell you about the water first. The last reading for water was January 18th. And we had a total of 28,300 gallons of use per day for the month. The same time last year, we had a total usage of just under 32,000 gallons per day. So we're using less. On average, it actually shows that we're using a little bit more than that, but when you figure it out and do the math, it works out to 2,000 or 3,000 gallons less than last year. And just like in the last few reports, we kind of look at that as some of the leaks that we've repaired in the past that aren't continually a slow leak 24 hours a day.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you. Somebody is talking on a phone and should mute themselves, please, because I can't hear what you're saying, Matt.
Liana's on the phone behind Jay. I can hear her talking on the phone.
Oh, well, could you ask her to go to another room? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So let me see here. So I have, I know what the concerns from a lot of residents are. The monthly gas and electric bills at this time of the year are more expensive than other times of the year. I looked through all the bills today. Some folks have the same averaged bill, and a lot of folks though have, $200 or $300 gas bills and very similar electric bills. I went back and also did an online search of the average, the high and the low temperatures from when we read the meters last, which was December 9th through January 10th. The average daily low was 41 degrees and the average daily high was 56 degrees throughout that month. But many of the nights were in the 30s and sometimes in the low 30s. So the rates are the same as what has been charged in the past and is currently being charged, but the usage has gone up because I think because of the cold and people are using their heaters and furnaces more. A lot of the older homes that are, 40 years old or 40 plus years old, the insulation value is very low. Several times in the past when residents have been remodeling their homes, we got to see the inside of the homes with the paneling removed, and I didn't really recognize this until seeing it, but what happens over the course of 40 years is the majority of the insulation in the walls sinks, and it may be between 6 and 8 inches above the floor, but above that there's zero insulation, and there's a 1/4 inch of wood paneling, 2 inches of airspace, and then metal siding or plastic siding on the outside of most of the homes. So there's very, very little insulation. Some people with the older homes still have gotten double pane windows, which helps a lot. But I think the real concern is the amount of use, not any rate changes from PG&E. So I don't know if that answers any questions or the questions that you had for me, but that was what I found today looking through the different bills.
So I think the point, Matt, is that there hasn't been any rate change from PG&E.
No, there is not. When
Yeah, there
when
was.
I'm sorry,
There was. It's like up 20%.
Ellen, can
Sorry.
you ask to be recognized and wait until Matt is finished
Yeah.
speaking?
when
Sorry. Can you ask Liana to go in another room? Thank you.
when any resident or any homeowner renter uses gas or electric from PG&E, there are tiers of use. On your bill, it'll say from 1 to 400% is your baseline. And above that, you get into tier 2 and there's quite a bit more charge. And then above that is tier 3. And it goes up from there. I don't think there is a tier above 4. But I called PG&E and asked them how they break that down and why. And they said it's just an encouragement for people to have less use. But they charge everybody quite a bit of money. With the more you use, the more you have to pay. And that's when the rates do increase, is when the use goes past your baseline.
Mhm.
Matt, aren't we on MCE energy instead of,
Everything still goes through PG&E. I believe that we are on MCE, but the billing is done through PG&E.
So if there is a rate change, it's from MCE, not PG&E. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I'm reading the PG&E bill. But when I think that several years ago, we elected to go through Marin Clean Energy and use renewable energy. And
Yes.
I do the same at my house, but I also see that MCE charges every month an extra charge that is related to their use. And I honestly, it's very complicated. It seems simple, but when you really look into it, there's a lot of complicated jargon, and it's really hard to tell if you're getting a better deal, you're using better energy, if you're getting a cheaper deal financially than you are going straight through PG&E. We've had the same account with PG&E here for 20 years, 20 plus years.
It's probably worthwhile investigating, Matt, but it sounds like Marine Clean Energy is supplying renewable energy in part to PG&E to satisfy our energy needs, and PG&E continues to bill us, although they are essentially acting as a distributor for MCE through our account. In other words, MCE is supplying us with the electricity through PG&E, and PG&E is billing us as appropriate.
You're correct.
It's my understanding that, yeah, that we're on MCE Energy, but it's not the cleanest form. I think we're at 70, I forgot, 70 or 80%, something like that, maybe 75% of clean energy. And there's a higher level. I think I call it deep green. That's 100% clean energy. It costs a bit more. And it's something that we might want to consider, once we get our finances leveled out.
That is my recollection as well, that of the tiers, we voted to not go to the most expensive tier, even though it would make us feel better because it's totally clean. We figured it was too expensive. So, and if people are really having a hard time with their energy bills the way they are right now, I don't see that as something that we should in good conscience do anytime soon. Go to
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the residents?
Ellen Jane has her hand up.
Ellen Jane.
Thank you. Yeah, I did the math and the rates did go up for this most recent cycle. They went up about 20% for the gas. That's at the first level of therms, being charged at 2.446 cents per therm. And then I think last month it was, I'm not looking at it, but I think it was 2.04 or something like that. And what they also do is they'll change the therms, they'll decrease the therms in the first level. And that's another way they can get us. But yeah,
Ellen Jane,
if anybody, I understand I'm one of the low.
Ellen Jane, do you have a question?
What, Jay?
Is there a question?
I'm commenting, Jay. No.
Okay.
Well, there's a proposition. If anyone wants to learn to save some energy, I could give lessons. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the residents? Seeing none, thank you, Matt. Let's move on to the PAC Treasury report. Steve?
Okay. The PAC petty cash account is still at $2,193. We rarely spend money. The annual PAC budget, which is the PAC budget within the park budget, $4,000 a year. So far this year, we've only spent $1,005. If we have an election later this year, that usually adds $700 or $800 that we have to spend, but it's not clear yet that will happen. Now for the financial report, the DSCR is once again, like last month, it's all messed up because of things that the city did. I was able to make adjustments to the owner expense that they spent over $300,000 on, but according to the loan agreement, they are only, we only include 25,000 of that in our DSCR calculation. So when I found that, it was easy to make those adjustments. Even so, with all the adjustments I usually do, we still come out at about 1.75, which is not great. But I don't worry about it because as the year comes to an end, usually Jay, Matt, and Chris Blunk and I get together and we talk about the budgets and what adjustments can be made. And in all likelihood, we'll be fine toward the end of the year. That's my report. Any questions?
From the board? Any questions from the residents? Thank you, Steve. Moving on to the 2x2 meeting, and the report we can begin with Carol Joy Harris speaking about our meeting that we had with Mark Milberg.
Okay, there isn't a 2x2 report per se because there has not been a 2x2 meeting since our last PAC board meeting. However, I thought this would be a good place to include on the agenda the information to inform the people at this meeting and anyone who reads the minutes or looks at the video later, that we took it upon ourselves to set up a meeting with Mark Milberg. He is the city council member who represents the district that includes Hamilton and Marin Valley. And this meeting occurred, I think, a week ago between or among Jay and me and Mark Milberg. He is currently the mayor pro tem, so he will be mayor next year. He has been to Marin Valley before, but he had never been in the clubhouse. And he listened very well. We had a very good meeting. We just wanted him to become more familiar with the park, what our issues are. We gave him a little thumbnail history of the park, how it started and eventually went through Al Fry and now the city, and just the structure of everything. And we gave him the nickel tour of the clubhouse and showed him all the facilities around it, the pool, etc. And he was very impressed, and he listened very well and has a much better idea, I think, now of who we are. And I was very happy with the way it went. Do you want to add to that, Jay?
Yeah, a little bit. He's a very, as Carol Joy points out, he listens very well, and he was able to understand what a lot of our issues are. And, you know, it's important for us to establish a contact with him in the sense that he now represents the district, and we are in that district, and we represent well over 400 people who are voting in the city council elections. And it is a political happening, his election to the council, and he wants to know his constituents, and he wants to know what our issues are. And because of our unique status of being an enterprise under the general mantle of the city of Novato, there's a lot of issues that interrelate with the city and how we are managed, how we can do our project planning, and so on and so forth. So being able to sit down and give him, again, the nickel tour, and to give him an understanding of how we operate under the mantle of the city and how we are dependent on them for so many issues. And the more he understands this, the more I think later on he'll be able to intercede on our behalf with the city staff. So it was a very good meeting, and we're going to try to continue to maintain a contact with him in the sense that he is a very good avenue into the oversight of the city staff and how they deal with us. So again, it was a very good meeting. Was there any questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the residents? Okay, as an addendum to that, I did have a chance to talk with Chris Plum today, and again, bring up our issues of wanting to get the roof for the clubhouse fixed as soon as possible. And although he's very busy, he certainly indicated his desire to be of help to us. And we're going to continue presenting our issues to him in the sense that he is the one that officiates over how the city can actually help us get work done that we feel to be required to maintain the maintenance of Marin Valley Mobile Country Club. As you saw from Matt's report, he's doing a very bang-up job in maintaining the club, but there are some long-term issues that need to be constantly attended to, such as the electrical distribution or the maintenance of the buildings on our property. So it's good that we keep as close contact as we can with city staff and with the political oversight of the city council. So again, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Or if not, we'll move on to project planning with John Hanson and myself. And basically, project planning is really dependent on the availability of funds from the budget. And right now, Chris Blount is in a review of the infrastructure report that he had received. And he said today that he wouldn't be able to begin to analyze that until the end of this month. And we are encouraging him to pass that report on to the Helsing Group and Matt Greenberg, and also that we can take a look at it. Because again, obviously, we have our feet on the ground here, and rather than looking at the history and looking at the necessity to maintain things through the longevity of them historically, doesn't really speak directly to what's actually happening on the ground here. So we want to make sure that physically what's happening at Marin Valley Mobile Country Club has an overview and an input into the generic engineering of the components of Marin Valley Mobile Country Club on their historical ability to survive, or when they need to be replaced based on the longevity from their manufacturer, rather than what happens. I mean, for example, New York City is still using wooden pipes to supply water to some parts of the city, which have been installed, hundreds of years ago. So, we need to get our hands on that report, and we're working towards that. And again, our project planning is really necessitated by having available funds. And until we can figure out how to not have rents raised unnecessarily, and how we're going to need to maintain the infrastructure of the club and maintain the buildings, we have to really just soft pedal it. Can you add anything to that, John?
No, I really can't.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the residents? Okay. John Hanson, can you comment on Invest what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you very much for that article that you put into the Echo on earthquake. It was excellent. And I enjoin everyone, all the residents, to really take a hard look at it. It was very, very well done.
Oh, well, thank you, Jay. Yeah, it wasn't really intended to be as timely as it was, given what's happened in Syria and Turkey. But, you know, it's really, I don't want to use the term fortuitous, but it works really to have something going on in the world that brings people's attention to what our potential is here on earthquakes. And it also just so happens that we will be at the next MVES meeting, which is coming up Monday. We have an earthquake protocol that we want to address and put together. We put together a draft plan of that, and we'll hopefully get that ironed out a bit coming up next Monday. The other thing I want to mention is about the incidents of last month, and they happened all over the county, pretty much all over the state. The floods, that is, and the heavy rains, and the all of the things that happened as a result of that. But I think it's real important to note that that didn't happen here. Matt mentioned a few of the things that happened, you know, flooding in the basement, and there's a few other odds and ends, but we didn't have any major incidents here. And I would like to really commend Matt on the work that he does all year round on, you know, on the mitigation of the floods that we have. That's V ditches, the drainage ditches on the hillsides, the walls that go up here and there, the retaining walls around the park. That's an ongoing basis. And the French drains around the park. All of that happens all year round. And this last month is when it really paid off, all of that work. So yeah, thank you, Matt, for being a conscientious servant.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. It's my pleasure.
And that really does it for the MVES report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? From residents? Seeing none, John Feld, can you give us a heads up on what's happening at HOL?
Yes. John is not available right now, but I would like to say that during the last meeting, we actually met before you this month. We commended Pauline Hawkins on all the work that she has done with the landscaping, that she is needing further surgery and is really unable to continue her work doing all the landscaping. And HOL has given that work over to MVMCC, who will be taking care of the landscaping from now on. And we're actually going to have a little event to thank Pauline and show all that she has contributed over the years. And other events that are coming up there's 3 others that are coming right up. One is the trash pickup, which will be March 17th. That's a Friday instead of the usual Saturdays. And Art in the Park will be April 22nd. And we're going to have a large community gathering on the topic of recycling. And that will happen in the ballroom on April 29th. And we'll probably
April 8th. April 8th.
I'm sorry, April 8th. That's a Saturday from 11 to 1. And we will probably have pizza and drinks and request everyone to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? From residents? Marvel,
I'd like to report on behalf of President Carolyn Corey.
please.
She says February 18th, we're celebrating Mardi Gras. She says, don your beads and come celebrate with everybody. There's going to be red beans and rice with or without sausage. Toe tapping music by Virginia Tishner and Marty Eggers. The sign up deadline for this event is February 15th. As far as pub nights are concerned, Friday finger food is being provided at $2 for packaged snacks and $3 for finger foods. And that's a report for this month.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Residents? Okay, Steve Plosher, can you give us an update on the Pac board election, where that stands in terms of the calendar?
Well, we're not approaching any of the action dates yet, but we do have a standing election committee with Timo Navsky as the committee chairman. And I believe Carol Joy will be the PAC member in charge of the election if it happens, or even the first stages till we know it's happening or not, because my name is up, so I will not be the PAC member in charge of it.
Okay, good.
Steve, remind everybody, please, of which people will be up for re-election.
I think it's Vicky and myself, should she choose to stay on the board.
Okay, thank you.
I will choose to stay on the board.
Thank you. Okay,
But other people can run for the seat on the board. Even if Vicky and I choose to stay on the board, they can run against us. And there will be announcements about when it's appropriate to throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Right.
Throw your name in the hat, whatever.
The hat in the ring.
I think it worked. That's pretty clear either way. Okay, no new business, no old business, no old business, no new business. And the next month, the first Tuesday is going to fall on March the 7th. And I'd like to propose that to be our next formal meeting of the PAC board, where all members of the board gather together. During the month, any two people can gather together and talk. And as long as we don't carry opinions onto other PAC board members, it's certainly okay under the Brown Act. So any questions about whether one can attend that March 7th meeting from the board members, or is everyone good with that?
Mhm.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Steve. John. Good. And Carol Joy, are you going to be with us on March the 7th? All right. So we have a consensus here. We will have our next board meeting on March the 7th at 6 p.m. And I wish you all a good evening and happy days.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
I second it, or whatever.
I third it.
Okay.
Good night, one and all.
Good night.